Hello, everybody, and good afternoon. My name's Don Arleth, and you're watching World News, coming to you live from Warsaw. European leaders have approved the 17th sanctions package against Russia, targeting hundreds of shadow fleet vessels and financial institutions. It comes as the UK announced 100 fresh sanctions designed to push Russian President Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to end the war. Our EU correspondent, Angela Skujins, has this next report.
Curbing Russia's illegal energy profits is the centrepiece of the 17th sanctions package levelled by the EU, approved on Tuesday in the Belgian capital against Russia. Now, we heard from the EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, that the thrust of this package is to put pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin so that he can go to the negotiating table with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and to agree to a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, which has been called upon by various European leaders as well as Zelensky himself. Now, at the core of this sanctions package is those 200 names of vessels allegedly operating as part of Russia's murky shadow fleet that are escaping EU surveillance, bringing in energy profits to Moscow. What's interesting is that we heard from the EU Commissioner for the Economy, Valdis Dombrovskis, who said earlier this week he would propose to those G7 leaders putting a price cap on Russian oil, bringing that down to only $50 per barrel. This would hopefully hit the Kremlin where it hurts. But what has been left off of this 17th sanctions package is what to do with roughly 200 billion euros in Russian frozen state assets currently tied up in Belgian financial institution Euroclear. TVP World put the matter of this pool of cash to Poland's top diplomat, Radosław Sikorski. Let's take a listen to what he had to say regarding what should be done with this money.
The most important thing at the moment is to secure those assets so that they don't become available to Russia in case someone vetoed the prolongation of sanctions, and that's I believe doable. But yes, in the end, someone will have to A, continue paying for the functioning of the Ukrainian state, and B, pay for Ukraine's reconstruction. This can be done either by the aggressor or by our taxpayers. I think the aggressor should pay.
What is important to note as well, on Tuesday, 10 Downing Street in London announced 100 fresh sanctions targeting Russian military and financial institutions and individuals. This was meant to coincide with this 17th sanctions package to really put the pressure on Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, the elephant in the room is the US. The EU's top diplomat, Kaja Kallas, acknowledged that the US is really not putting as much pressure on its Moscow counterparts, but we are hoping that some kind of sanctions unveiling could force that Russian president to the negotiating table. However, it would be a surprise, as we heard US President Donald Trump announce late Monday night that sanctions were currently off the table, as he says he doesn't want to endanger any ceasefire proposals. But there is a press conference scheduled for later Monday where we're hoping to hear more about the contours of this 17th sanctions package and how it could hopefully end the bloodshed. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
U.S. President Donald Trump commented on his recent phone call with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. According to Trump, he asked the Russian president to stop the war in Ukraine. Otherwise, the U.S. would step away from the peace negotiations. Trump also said that Putin has had enough of the conflict and wants the war to end.
I said, when are we going to end this, Vladimir? I've known him for a long time now. I said, when are we going to end this bloodshed, this bloodbath? It's a bloodbath. But I said to him, we got to get going. And I did say also, if I thought that you couldn't do it, I'd step away, because what are you going to do? We don't have boots on the ground. We wouldn't have boots on the ground. But I did say, it's time. You got to stop this thing. And I believe he wants to stop. Look, I would be, I think, very able to tell whether or not he wanted to or what. I thought there was a very good chance, like a 50-50 chance, that he would say, I want to take the whole thing. I didn't know what he was going to say. and then they have a different kind of a problem. But I believe he wants to stop.
And responding to these comments, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called on his American counterpart to tighten sanctions against Russia if Moscow fails to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. According to Zelensky, if there is no ceasefire, new EU sanctions will be introduced, which the Ukrainian leader says should be followed by a package of restrictions from the United States.
The European sanctions will be announced and will be strong. We have specific dates. We have certain agreements, I'm sure of it. And moreover, I would also like to reassure you that another package will follow. Should there be no ceasefire from the Russian side, there will be robust European sanctions. And with regard to the package from the US, I believe this is a different story. It would take for us to work thoroughly with the US in order for them, at a certain stage in time, to introduce the necessary sanctions. This will help us tremendously, both in the bank area and the economic area. I believe they will have the corresponding influence, and the US will decide whether Russia profits from this war or has to face serious economic challenges.
Lawmakers are working on measures to reinforce the country's border amid the ongoing threat from Russia and Belarus. The issues being discussed today include extending the suspension of asylum rights and withdrawing from the Ottawa Treaty. MPs will vote on the government's motion to extend the temporary suspension of the right to asylum on the state border with Belarus. The suspension came into effect on March 27th and expires after 60 days. Today will also see the first reading of the government's draft bill on the termination of the Ottawa Convention, prohibiting the use of anti-personnel landmines as a means of armed combat. Poland not only needs a physical barrier, but also a legislative one, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk said as he addressed the Polish parliament ahead of a proposal by the cabinet to prolong restrictions on asylum applications.
The right to seek asylum is an important one, but only when it's not organized by Russia, Belarus, smugglers or gangsters. When this is not only illegal migration, but also mass migration, it is, in a sense, a form of aggression against Poland. I'm not talking about the intentions of those who want to cross the border. They pay Putin, they pay Lukashenko, they share their money with those who facilitate this practice, and only Poland's firm stance, not only the border wall, which, as you know, had to be rebuilt to serve its purpose so that there is a functional physical barrier, but most importantly, what is needed is a legislative change.
Amid the heated lead-up to the runoff election in Poland, one of the two remaining candidates, Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski, representing the largest group in the ruling coalition, the Civic Coalition, urged all Polish people to go to the polls for the crucial vote on June 1st.
I want everyone to support me. Every vote matters. As you can see, we have MPs of the Civic Coalition here, senators, ordinary people, everyone I speak to during the election campaign, as well as hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of local government officials. This is exactly what this is about. We need total mobilization. We need at least 1.5 million more people to go vote in the second round, and then we will definitely win. We are moving forward.
3 men are set to go on trial on Tuesday in Munich for allegedly spying for Russia and plotting sabotage against Germany's military and railway infrastructure. At the higher regional court in Munich, 3 German-Russian dual nationals stand accused of planning sabotage attacks on military and railway targets in Germany. The primary suspect, Dieter S., is believed to be the ringleader of the operation, while his co-defendants Alexander J. and Alex D. are accused of aiding him. Prosecutors have also charged Dieter S. with membership in a foreign terrorist organization for his alleged connections to a pro-Russian militia in eastern Ukraine. The trial is expected to continue for several months, with over 40 hearings scheduled through December. And that's all the time we have on this edition of World News. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the bottom line coming up next.